right. Do you have my screen?
It's up.
Yeah.
All right, great. Well, we won't spend too much time talking about who we are, just so we can get to the meat of the presentation, but I'm going to take the first half and then Christy's going to move on from there. I'll give a little bit of the project overview. I think most people around here probably, hopefully, have been on Charlotte Street and enjoy it, but it's helpful to put a little bit of context under some of the constraints we were working under. And we started this project back in January 2019, and the council goal was to improve Charlotte Street with a road diet. And they gave, because of bond funding, they had just under $1 million to put toward that project. We started kind of the planning, community engagement in January 2019. We went to construction in June 2019, and it was completed in the summer of 2020. A little bit of a hold up there just to time things with when we were able to pour concrete. As one like me who's not in the construction world, I didn't realize how quick of a timeline that was. Christy can talk a little bit about that if folks have questions. But it was a super fast process to get this done, despite the fact that it took 20 years of planning. Well, actually, closer to 30 years of planning to from initial conception of we need to do something about Charlotte Street to getting it completed as we see it today. So just some of the key constraints is from staff when we got the project was implement the multimodal vision. So we had to think about all the modes using Charlotte Street. We had to coordinate it with the repaving opportunity. So this really was a repaving project. That's why we were able to do it. We had the constraint of remaining within the existing right-of-way, and Charlotte Street is not a wide street, so we had to fit a lot into a small space. And we also, unfortunately, could not do any utility relocation. And this picture is a good example of the need for utility relocation, but that's an expensive task, and we just didn't have the budget to do it. And just a quick overview of our study area. We actually did the study from the interchange at 240 to Edwin Place. And the reason we stopped at Edwin Place is the land use changes. It's already drops down, and most of the traffic hits one of those streets between Orchard and Edwin. So we didn't have to go beyond Edwin. And then just a couple things about the traffic context, what we were dealing with. And actually, this is where Christy is going to take over. So I'll let Christy, if you just want to give me a cue on when you want me to change the slide.
Okay. Yeah. So this is just a good picture of the 4 to 3 lane road diet and just introductory slide. We'll go into that more on the next slide. So in this picture here, you can see this is closer to the 240 interchange, where the corridor was maybe a little over 40 feet wide, and it's four travel lanes and transitioning out to the signal there that had turn lanes. And so this is kind of our transition zone. No bike facilities, the pedestrian facilities are poor. Then the next slide shows kind of what the task we had, which was to provide that 4 lane on the previous slide to 3 lane conversion. So you'll see the 2-way left turn lane, which takes all those turning movements out of the 3 lane and helps traffic flow nicer, reduces rear end crashes. And then we had one travel lane in each direction for cars, and then 1 travel lane in each direction for bicycles. An interesting point here is that we did have to decide to go down to less than 10-foot lanes for the 3 lanes, because we really wanted to make sure the bikes had at least the minimum. We weren't going to take them down below 5 feet. We didn't feel like that was, a good proportion of space or a good distribution of space on this road. And we couldn't go down less than 10 feet for the center turn lane just due to national standards. So it came out of the vehicle lane. Next slide there. We also looked at pedestrian safety improvements, tried to improve crossings. One thing you'll notice if you've been on this street is that they're not this unique median. We did not do raised medians. And that was a concession for emergency vehicles and concerned citizens. But we wanted to create like a visual cue of this is a pedestrian space. So we came up with a more creative idea there. And then we also had bicycling improvements, bike detection. We had to get FHWA approval for these green bike boxes for the city. So now they can use these. And some unique signal phasing to really better provide advanced movements for bikes and pedestrians, reduce some of the vehicle conflicts. And then, so one just traffic context element, this photo does a good job of showing you that the volumes were heavier down on the south end of the corridor, approaching the interchange, and people were really concerned in the morning, you know, the traffic headed to 240 commuters, this backing up through Charlotte Street and dropping it to one lane. You know, the concern was all this traffic's going to double the line. And so they're going to be backed up forever on Charlotte Street. So just to give you an idea of the concern people had before, hey, we're concerned we're going to sit in traffic a long time. And then above here, the traffic's drop a bit. So to 12,000 north of Chestnut. So this was the area of greatest concern. And then on the next slide, we just wanted to show you, we're going to go to the before and after results. So you can go to the next slide, Christy. So just for you that don't know, you know, this was really forward thinking of the city to say, let's get a contract in place to collect data before so that we actually can see what happened after and see if people's concerns really came to fruition. And what does this mean for future projects in the city? So we're phased for 3 rounds of data collection. We did the before data right before this started. Construction started last, or not last November, but November 2019. And then, you know, we had this post implementation data collection in November of 2020. But obviously COVID and pandemic volumes are down. So we do have one last round to do kind of a check post-pandemic, hopefully next fall. So we have 3 phases and we'll tell you what we found. You know, obviously everything with this caveat of things are different right now. So if you, right. So just keep that in mind. But, you know, we did data points, three data points on Charlotte Street. We collected vehicle classification. So are they big trucks? Are they buses? Are they passenger cars? Or are they bikes? At 3 locations. And we also obtained speed data. And then we also, you can see there's 2 little data points on this map to the west of Charlotte Street. And those were areas people were concerned about traffic cutting through because they're avoiding Charlotte Street if there's too much traffic. And so we'll go into what we found in these. So the speed results were kind of interesting. And I've been seeing a lot of national news about how there's just been more reckless pandemic drivers and a lot of speeding. And it actually is kind of interesting. And I think when we get this post data next fall, it'll be really interesting to see what that shows. But, you know, the good thing is that on Charlotte Street, you know, pre and post, we would usually think a road diet will slow traffic down. And we did just kind of see in general speeds were pretty consistent from before and after studies. So that's all this shows here. The point about pandemic, you know, here's the daily traffic volume. So before COVID to during COVID, volumes are down about 20%. And so, you know, that's just data that you would want to know when you're looking at this.
So Christy, can I hop in really?
Yeah, anytime.
Quick. So just to make that connection with pandemic, during the pandemic, fewer cars have been on the road, and fewer cars on the road often leads to increased speeding, right? Yep. Because I mean, congestion does play a role in slowing people down. So what I mean, I guess maybe what's sort of suggested here is that even with traffic volumes dropping on Charlotte Street, the speed has maintained. It's been the same. So it'll be.
Yeah, and it even went down a bit in the kind of heart of Charlotte Street. So I think that's a good connection, Mike, is that this could be an indication that we're actually have reduced speeds with the road diet. And I think we'll get that verification post-pandemic. But I do agree that could be what that's pointing to for sure.
Okay, great, thank you.
Yeah, and jump in anytime. And then just to kind of point out an interesting thing on the next slide about the traffic is that if you look at, Christy, can you advance this slide?
Sure.
Oh, sorry, I forgot. We want to talk about bicycles first. Why we're here. Interestingly, the volumes of bikes really bumped up down near Clayton Street. So, you know, we went that one really wide transition zone going down to 240. We saw, you know, a 75% increase in bicycle traffic, and that is substantial. The other areas along the corridor was pretty steady with pre-pandemic.
I'm going to stop. I just got to, because I want to say that I want to hear that again. 75%
5%
increase in bicycle ridership.
Yep. In what was a hostile environment for bikes. So, and Christy's probably one of them daily because our office is right there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, that's significant when we talk about like shifting mode share, or people are opting to be, I mean, there's definitely a dynamic where there are pandemic peddlers, right? There are people who are pulling their bikes out and they're getting on bikes. We've seen that. We've been across. But a 75% increase, that's huge. That is so significant.
Yeah, I mean, I was really pleased to see that. And you'll notice it shows like a drop up at Edwin and Baird, but it's probably like 3 bikes per day, which is just daily variation in my mind. So, yeah. All right. And so just to give you an idea of the daily traffic, it's the AM peak that's down more during pandemic, and that kind of reflects the national trend. So it's down 30 to 40% in the AM, but on the next slide, you'll see that the PM, even up at Edwin Place, is almost back to pre-pandemic. I mean, down 5% from our previous count. That could be a daily traffic variation. So we'll see in the PM peak, so if you're looking at did travel times increase in the PM, that's kind of where we want to look, because that's returning more to pre-pandemic. So we'll look at those travel times here. Christy, yeah, there you go. So in the AM, this a lot of data on one slide for the data junkies out there. But
where's Clark Mackey?
Yeah.
We will have a link to this on our AOB website, most likely, so that those of you who really need to know for argument's sake, we can link to this or send it to you if you need it.
Great. Yeah. And I'll just, to simplify it, turn everybody's attention to that little orange box and the bold numbers at the bottom. The difference in travel time northbound before and after is down 1.5 seconds. So people were worried that it'll take longer to go through the corridor. It's down. So it's taking less time, northbound and southbound. And then on the next slide, during PM peak hours, where the volumes are up, you'll see that even then, if you go to that orange box again, those bold letters, for PM peak hour, if you're going north, coming home, the commute traffic pattern, your travel time has gone down 6 seconds from the bottom to the top of the corridor.
Wow, because I mean, that was part of the resistance. That's one of the years that it took one of the reason it took 20 years to get this, to build infrastructure for the most amount of people, was that people who frequent the corridor in automobiles were terrified of 2 things, primarily. The number one thing that they were terrified of was that they would be stuck in their automobile on Charlotte Street for a long period of time if we made facilities safe for people to move about safely. And then the second thing, the biggest criticism of the project was emergency vehicles. And it sounds like, I mean, you sort of solved, I mean, there's a lot of research that says that road diets do not impact a vehicle response time. But you also made those, the pedestrian refuge at the surface to maximize emergency vehicular speed.
Yeah, and one point that I'll add to that, I was going to hit it in a later slide, but it's a good time now. At the multimodal presentation that we gave, this same presentation, Jessica, the city's assistant transportation director said that she has gotten feedback from the fire department that they actually love Charlotte Street, that it's easier for them to get through because the vehicles can scooch over into the bike lane when an emergency vehicle comes through instead of the vehicle kind of being gridlocked in with everybody else. So everybody has room to move over and they have that center lane, and we don't have those refuge islands raised and they can just plow on through. And so it's actually helped them in response time. We haven't actually added that into our presentation, but we will, because that's a pretty important point.
Get that into the presentation.
Get it into the presentation.
In print, Instagram, tweeted. Let's get it out there.
Firefighters.
Yeah.
Well, and it's interesting too, because there was even a news episode on that, like, people on the news before this, like, concerned about emergency vehicles. And so you're right, Mike, that was one of the biggest concerns we got, other than traffic delay. Yeah, so I think just to report on the cut through traffic too, there were concerns that people would divert over to Washington. Speeds are down there, volumes are down there. Bikes, we're not really seeing much change in that yet. I mean, one bike versus 0 per day, but that's an increase. And on Madison, the same. Speeds are down, volumes are down, bicycle traffic's about the same. So I'm really excited to see what we get on these streets in the next round of data collection too. But this is all indications are pointing to that people's greatest fears. And that's the third concern they had, Mike, is what does that mean for side traffic? And where they're just going to go over to Merriman or side streets where it's already a problem. And, we're not really seeing that in this data.
Right.
And just to let you know, as a wrap up, that we will be doing more transit data collection. One of the most exciting things about this project will be to see the reduction in crashes. That's the goal of a road diet, and we're hoping we will find that, but we need to get that data for a full year. So that'll be coming in the next round. And then, just a brief summary, that we're finding, speeds are down, and obviously ADTs are down because of COVID, bike ridership's up, cut through traffic's down, and, the travel times have actually gone down. So, really that summary is very telling. People were concerned about that 20,000 vehicles per day, but it's working, and hopefully it will continue to work post-pandemic. So I believe it will. And Christy, you can cover this. This is actually, to me,
Sure.
one of the most important slides, because the calming nature of a road diet is sometimes hard to quantify, but people's reaction tells us a lot. Go ahead, Christy.
Yeah, and just some highlights of things that we've heard. The city has received email feedback. We've received email feedback, and there's been some follow-up. The consistent themes that we are hearing are that people feel much safer walking, biking, and driving. One person saying she now actually enjoys driving on Charlotte Street, so taking care of the drivers, and then folks who are walking. The comment of, we can officially feel safe walking around our neighborhood. Everyone is safer, whether you're in a car or on a bike or foot in a wheelchair. First time I've felt safe since moving here on Charlotte Street. And this one in the gray box, I am going to take the time to actually read it, because this one's important to us, and I'll tell you why. So I just wanted to offer a heartfelt thanks to each of you and all who were involved in making that stretch of Charlotte Street safer and more accessible. I know you weren't able to do all you'd planned to do, but it's a vast improvement. It's especially freeing to have access to sidewalks and be able to explore areas outside during a time like this. And that quote was from a guy named Matt Lee, who uses a wheelchair to get around, and he actually was really key to helping us in our design. And that was after the road diet was done. That was feedback that he sent to us. When we were out in the field with him, even in his motorized wheelchair, he had trouble getting up some of those curb ramp grades. And it's just important that, it's nice to bike down, it's nice to kind of take a stroll, but for folks who are dependent on good sidewalks in our community, his feedback and his helping us shape that project can't be underestimated. And then another thing, just at some point in time, someone talked to the business owners and they say it seems to be helping. And then the thing that we will add there is our emergency response. That's where we'll get it in writing, Mike.
All right,
So-
great. Yeah.
And I
Good
really
feedback
wish
overall.
I wish we could have gotten photos. One of our coworkers coming into the office said he saw people rollerblading down bike lanes within the first 2 days. And I've seen young kids biking together, and it's just really nice to see that it's opening up to users of all ages and abilities, and not just, avid road cyclists. So
That's
Great.
right. That's right. All right. And that is a
Thanks
wonderful.
for joining us. We really appreciate the update on this project. I want to encourage all of our viewers to go check out Charlotte Street. If you haven't done it already, go ride your bike or walk on the sidewalk, check out some of the businesses along Charlotte Street, and let them know how you feel about it, and send some feedback to the city so we have even more data to add to these beautiful
yes,
slides.
please do.
And feel free
Thank
to
you.
drop cookies off at 80 Charlotte Street at any time.
Ah,
All right, sure.
Yep.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Can I
Thanks.
take back my screen, Christy?
Yes, I will stop sharing.
All right. Thank you so much for
Okay.
your time.
Thank you.
I very much appreciate it.